Welcome to Right Republic, a channel dedicated to providing a right-wing perspective of Indian politics. The right is usually right. Okay, in this video, let's talk about the labor reforms announced by the Modi government recently. In the previous video, we talked about the agricultural reforms, but these labor reforms, they are one more step in making sure that India is self-reliant, as Modi says, Atmanirbhar. This is one of the key reforms that has been pending. Unfortunately, Manmohan Singh should have done it since in the 10 years that he was in power, but he didn't do it. Modi tried to do it in his first 5 years in power, but he couldn't succeed. But he's now using this crisis to push through these reforms, which are the need of the hour. One must say that the validity of these reforms, or let's say the effectiveness of these reforms, may have been reduced by essentially by delay, by automation and all that has happened in the last 20, 30 years. But even still, it is still important, even though the effectiveness may not be as high as it would have been, let's say, 20 years ago if it was passed in the 90s, for example. But anyway, it is still welcome, and we need to create large-scale manufacturing jobs if we are to succeed. We still have too many people working in the agriculture sector, but manufacturing as a component of GDP produces probably around 15% to the economy. But that is still too low, and we need to create probably 100 million jobs in the manufacturing sector if we are to advance as an economy and increase disposable incomes in this country. But these labor reforms, there were 44 different labor laws previously, but the Modi government, since they came to power, they've been trying to consolidate these laws into, let's say, 4 different codes. One is on wages, the code on wages, and the second is the code on industrial relations, and then the code on social security and safety, and the last one, health and working conditions. The code on wages has already passed the parliament in August of 2019, if I remember. But the other 3 things, especially the one on industrial relations, which is going to be the most complex and the most difficult to pass, if they can get it through, that would be a really good reform. Some of the states tried to do that. Rajasthan, Gujarat have already tried to do that. But that has not been effective as such, because in India, essentially, state governments, when they pass these reforms, they are the continuity of these reforms is not good as far as states are concerned. If a Congress or any non-BJP government comes to power, they would essentially overturn these reforms, just as it happened in Andhra Pradesh. Jagan Mohan Reddy's government has overturned many of the other reforms proposed by the Chandrababu Naidu government. And that trend has continued even in Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh. Some of the reform measures announced by BJP chief ministers have been overturned by their Congress counterparts when they came to power. So that is why we need an overarching law at the national level, and that's why they should be welcome. And the key provision in this industrial relations bill is the ability for companies, or let's say factories, to fire workers if they have more than 100 workers. If there are more than 100 workers, you need permission from the labor ministry of that state and probably even the central government to fire people. You cannot do mass firing of these employees if the company has more than 100. The Modi government now wants to increase that threshold to 300. And that would create, let's say, an incentive for companies to expand and hire more workers. And this threshold of 100 is actually making employees skeptical or wary of hiring more workers. Many companies employ 80 to 90 workers. But majority of these small and medium industries, they employ, let's say, I think it's about 84% when I saw the figures last. 84% of these companies, they employ less than 100 people. So let's see if we increase the threshold to 300, let's say. There could be a chance that these companies can expand, they can invest. So that will increase labor productivity. In addition, if they can do something to, let's say, reduce compliance work and reduce the cost of compliance and let the companies be harassed by these labor inspectors at either state or national level, that would be good. And that's why we need to see the fine print of that as well. And hopefully, we will see both of these measures passed in the next session of Parliament, the monsoon session of Parliament, because the Industrial Relations Bill has already been introduced. It's been studied by a standing committee of Labour in Parliament. And that is the right way to do, because I'm not exactly supportive of these measures introduced by Yogi and Madhya Pradesh government, Shivraj Chauhan in Madhya Pradesh. Because if you do it at state level, that's not effective, that's one. But Yogi has essentially disbanded all the labor laws except 3 or 4. So that is not the right way to do. And no, and he has put a time frame of 3 years. But I don't think any company will invest if you have a time frame on these labor laws. Companies are not going to rush through to Uttar Pradesh and start hiring people. So that's why we need a national level law, and hopefully we will see something at the end of this monsoon session of Parliament, and we'll go some way through introducing labor reforms. Thanks.